A very good evening to those tuning in online, and a warm welcome to those present for our very first live discussion. Following a series of youth conversations last year, we at the Ministry of Community, Culture and Youth, as well as the National Youth Council, heard from our young people that they wish for Singapore to be a more inclusive society. And today, we will be discussing exactly the key question: how can we bring everyone along as we progress as a nation? Today's discussion is part of efforts to turn talk into action by firstly, bringing the conversation to a wider audience who may not have had the convenience to actually participate previously, and secondly, as a lead up to the Youth Action Challenge, which is a nationwide hackathon to empower youth to influence policy change and to start ground-up initiatives. My name is Daniel. I'm from the National Youth Council Engagement Team, and with me, I have Deborah Lam, co-founder of Society Staples, and we will be your facilitators for today's discussion. Yep.
All right, so before we introduce the list of all the speakers sitting beside us, we just want to set some ground rules to have this discussion. So we want this to be a safe space to have a very robust discussion that will take place probably in the next 2 hours or so. And there are just a couple of things to take note of. So number one is please criticize ideas. In fact, we welcome that, but do not direct your criticism to individuals. The second one is especially for the speakers over here, because there's only one mic. So if you do wish to speak, then please wait until the mic is in your hands before you start talking so that everyone is able to hear you. And the very last one is Daniel would actually be, interjecting with comments from the audience. So, as you're listening to all the, insights and opinions of our speakers, please feel free to just, put in your comments down so that, and, direct your questions if you have to any of these speakers, and, we will facilitate that entire flow. Okay, so without further ado, let's introduce our very first speaker, Edwin.
Hi everyone, I'm Edward, and I'm from NTU Student Union, and I'm in my final year of studies.
Hi everyone, I'm Chia Wee. I'm a Year 2 student from NUS, and I'm also part of the strategy team at Access Singapore.
Hi, I'm Wei Tong. I'm a Year 2 student at Yale NUS College. I also run a student organization called Compact, which is a volunteering organization. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sheena. I'm from the Insight Space, a leadership training company. The work I do revolve around, personal development, basically getting all of us to be better people. I have 2 cats at home. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Aaron. So I'm from Etch. We are a youth development and community development agency.
All right, so to kick things off, over the past year, we've done a series of youth conversations, and we've also polled some of our youths and speak to them on the ground. And we found out that actually 71% are concerned that in the pursuit of economic prosperity, society has forgotten the less fortunate and disadvantaged. So my question to you guys is, does that come as a surprise to you? Do you expect that figure actually to be much higher or actually much lower? And in fact, more than half of them also feel that social benefits will lead to a more equal society, prevent widespread poverty. Do you agree with that? And for those who are tuning in online, do let us know your thoughts as well on this question. Do you think we are doing enough to leave no one behind as we progress as a nation? Yeah, so do drop your comments. We'll be looking at them and feeding them into the discussion, right? So, anyone would like to start us off?
For me, I think I actually expect the number to be much bigger, because I think a lot of young people do feel that when Singapore moves very fast in terms of economy, actually a lot of people do get left behind. And I think in the past few years, there was also a conception where there was a growth at all costs strategy adopted by the government. But I think in recent years, the government has also introduced more interventions, social benefits, to uplift those who have been left behind. But whether or not this is sufficient, of course, it is never sufficient, because more can be done, not just from the government, but from, I think, a community level and individual level, which is why I'm really very impressed by our friend here, Chawi, who, together with his friends, started like a very meaningful organization to help peers. So I think it's really good that, you know, we encourage more of people to really start up organizations to help their peers.
Thank you so much, Edward. So, like Edward, I do feel that this number, you know, I would have thought it would be maybe about 80%-ish. So, I guess it's really not about, I guess this is a different generation compared to our parents and our grandparents. We value different things, and these things have come up in, for example, the National Youth Survey. And we value things beyond economic growth. We value the intangibles. We value a caring, inclusive society, and one that carries everyone along. So I think that it is definitely not surprising to see such perception among young people. As a student, as a youth, as someone working in Access, I have encountered many who really put in their all to really champion social causes beyond what they see that has been done. So I'm very heartened by that, and I hope that there are young people who are watching this as well, who have been in these efforts, who can join us in our conversation too.
Yeah, I think I'll just share according to my student organization's perspective. So I don't think that it's surprising, like 71%, above 50% is quite surprising, because like you can kind of see this from like the enrollment rate for my student organization. So it's generally quite high at the start of the year, and I feel like, especially for like freshmen that are coming into college, like they're very idealistic and they really believe in the cause of like community involvement and like reaching out to the more vulnerable communities. But I guess the real challenge is really about retainment. So like whether they continue from there, and like the real struggle and challenge is whether they can continue the efforts after being idealistic. Yeah.
So we're going round and round and round. Okay. This 71%, they are, what are they again?
71% are concerned. They're in the pursuit of economic prosperity. Society has forgotten the less fortunate.
All right, so 71% are concerned for like people, for the underprivileged, that they may be left behind. Yes. Right, okay. I'm sorry, I got distracted a little bit because they said, hold the mic closer. Sorry, I do. Okay, I hope all of you can hear me right now. In the work that I do, in the leadership training that I do, it is 100% that cares. 100% of the people that care for those who may be left behind. They care for those who are racing up in front. They care for those in between. And the trainings that I've done is for a whole range of people, from 18 years old, actually they have done like 16 years old, all the way until they are like corporate people even, yeah. And in the brain research that I've done in my studies also, we are physiologically designed to care for people. So when I look at this 71%, what came up for me is, perhaps is the phrasing of the question, perhaps, there are many things, there are so many factors that can give us that 71%, right? It could be, maybe I truly care, but what do you mean by care? Or it could be, through life, maybe in my 20 years or however, whatever age youths are, along the way they have learned to not care, but it doesn't mean that they really do not care inside. So this 71% for me in my head is, how was the question asked? Yeah, what were the contexts they were in? Was there anything that was required or demanded out of them? Because in training, for me to get that 100% everybody cares, it took a lot of work for people to see that, I do care for this person next to me, in front of me, somewhere out there also, yeah. So so my question is, if we were all designed physiologically to care for each other, then what's missing in our community? Something to think about, yeah. You say?
Actually, I thought that the percentage might be higher. I kind of agree with what Edward said, that there was a period in time where, everybody's mindset was economic growth at all costs. Why I agree with that is because me now as a parent, my oldest daughter is at P2. We are already facing peer pressure, to focus on grades just at P2. And bear in mind that MOE recently just removed the examinations for P1, P2, and I think P3 too, right? And there's a change of PSLE banding and stuff like that. So I think what the government is trying to do is really to remind parents that it's not just about grades. It is also about how can we be more human, right? How do we show care to society? And in fact, even at a corporate level, because I also do some corporate engagement, they're also trying to deviate from one-time community engagement and into a mid to long-term engagement. So I think the whole landscape is trying to evolve, right? And I really hope that everyone is able to chip in, like what our president say, is for and with the community, right?
Okay, so I think we talk, quite a fair bit of all of us expecting that number to be higher. And, I think both Edward as well as Aaron, you have also mentioned, both of you agree that in a few years ago, there was this whole strategy about, let's just move forward in the pursuit of economic prosperity. So, but, I'm sure also that the government has been doing a lot in recent years to come up with, a whole host of interventions, cutting across all different areas and categories, whether you talk about education, you talk about, financial assistance, they're trying to, lower that whole barriers of entry. So the question really is, are current interventions enough? And, in your area of work or just perhaps even in some of your lived experiences, can you just share a little bit about, what is your experience that give you this perception of whether or not the current interventions is enough? Anyone would like to go first? Okay.
Let me go in circles again. Okay, regarding the interventions, right? I think we need to look at interventions from two aspects, the physical and the non-physical aspect. I think the physical aspect, we can look at the monetary support, financial aid. Recently, they introduced increase in bursaries. So I think all these are good. But also, we cannot forget that there's the non-physical aspect, which is the social aspect, where people are left behind. And this is much more challenging to address because we are talking about how people are feeling, people-to-people interactions, because most of the time, when people feel excluded, is because of the interactions between people or the kind of opportunities that they fail to get. Speaking from personal experience, when I was in primary 1, because I came from a humble background and I was from a Chinese-speaking family, so when I went into school, I can see the difference because I was actually very shocked that a lot of my classmates could speak very good English, where I was struggling to understand. And eventually, a lot of these very well-spoken individuals actually end up on the gifted program. So what's left in my primary school were those, a lot of those were from those middle to lower income family. So I think there needs to be more strategies to tackle and see how we can continue to bridge this gap in terms of social, but not just financial aspects.
Yeah, so I will speak more within the context of the work I do. So it's within the context of the about students in the education system and the idea of socio-economic inclusivity. So just some context, so Access Singapore, the organization I'm from, is a very new ground-up organization, and it seeks to provide students from traditionally underprivileged backgrounds with externship and mentorship opportunities to help them close that network and relationship gap that we have identified. So the general question on whether interventions are enough, I would say that there have been a lot of interventions which help students, underprivileged students, get by, not enough to help them get ahead. And getting ahead is actually what matters at the end of the day when we're talking about assessing opportunities for all, right? So what do I mean by getting by? Getting by can really be thought of as, there have been many policies to close achievement gaps, direct policies like bursaries, subsidies, or supplementary lessons and whatnot. But we at Access feel that, like I said, not enough policies for getting ahead. And if I zoom out a little and I take a look at, for example, a recent LinkedIn survey, which surveyed 11,000 respondents across the Asia Pacific, they felt that the second most important factor to getting ahead was having a strong professional network. And so echoing what Edward said, we feel that there are these social relationship gaps that Access seeks to plug. So I feel that for moving forward, we do hope to see more interventions of helping students get ahead, perhaps by connecting them with mentors, by immersing them in the desired industries they're interested in, helping them to plant the seeds of that networks of the future.
Whether interventions are useful or not, in my opinion, it depends on the receiver also, largely on the receiver. I'm going to speak about responsibility over here. Okay, so if I would, oh dear, I'm going to speak about responsibility, I'm going to speak about entitlement, I'm going to speak about, okay, so it's not about the incentives or the interventions that you're giving me. If I were to receive it in gratitude and if I were to receive it with responsibility for my own life, I will churn out a very different set of results as compared to, say, you give me and I'm going like, hey, hello, I'm I don't know, I'm underprivileged, you are supposed to be giving me this. If I come from a space of entitlement, it will never be enough. The things that you're giving me will never be enough. And as a result, I will end up depending on you to live my life for me. So if you were to, oh dear. Oh, if you, I'm trying to figure out what's a good way to say this. Okay, so I've heard this before. Like years back, many years ago, they did a test with primary 1 students. They did a little quiz. So the quiz says this, why should I not litter? You only got 2 options. The first option is because I don't litter because it's unhygienic. The second one is because I will not get fined. Our primary 1 students, most of them, guess what they ticked? I do not litter so that I don't get fined. Yeah. Over here, it is revealing. It's revealing for me the emotional state that they are coming from. They are not coming from a space of dignity, of honor, of respect, but they're coming from a space of fear. And what I'm trying to say is, if we were to pay attention to the conversations that people are having, say with regards to the government, government got to give me this, I never give me this, we need to be able to identify the space that they're coming from. So if I'm coming from a space of gratitude, then I will require different needs from you versus if I'm coming from a space of entitlement, maybe I need to get a lesson on getting my ass together or something like this. Yeah. So just a quick share. My dad is a Singaporean. My stepmom is Thai. And they have 2 kids. My stepmom was on tourist pass for 18 years. So that means every few months you need to go back to Thailand and then come back here again and then go back to Thailand. So the kids are Singaporeans. For 18 years, she couldn't get a PR. Now, my dad is going like, the government, don't help. They are not very rich. Yeah, so they were really struggling to make ends meet. They're not giving enough, not giving enough. You every month give me $200. I take, but government, you still, yeah. But my stepmom, however, got $200, here's what we're going to do with it. She was coming from a space of gratitude, and because of that gratitude, she learned how to make use of it for the betterment of her family. She got her PR only recently. And my brother is like, 18 years later. Yeah. But through these 18 years, she has created so much, I don't know, she has provided so much for the family. Yeah, she at some point was the sole breadwinner for the family also on her tourist pass. Yeah. So I think being able to identify whether people are receiving it from a state of entitlement or gratitude makes a big difference as to how the interventions are being used. Oh, that said, I think we have very little education in terms of having people build that discernment. in our youth and in everyone. Yeah. I mean, we don't litter because we don't want to be fined, right?
Okay. Well, so the question is, are the current intervention enough, right? I think for me, I feel it's very subjective. It really depends on individual. How well informed are they about policies, grants, and things like that, and how do they utilize it, right? I share with you one personal experience I have with a caregiver. So she is a parent, she's a mom of a visually impaired child, and she's from Japan. So very interestingly, I thought that she will actually go back to Japan and so-called leave her job that she's currently now in Singapore. So because I thought that Japan being a more advanced country, it means that it's more inclusive, the interventions are better than Singapore. But actually her reply really surprised me because she said that no, she felt that in Singapore it's more inclusive than in Japan. And the rehabilitation program is so much better than what she could find back home. So that really surprised me, and that is from a foreigner's perspective. Right, so sometimes I think maybe as Singaporeans we really take things for granted. There probably is quite a lot of intervention, it's just that we are not that, either we are not well informed or we take it for granted. Yeah. And another thing about intervention for the social sector, because I travel around the region to do community projects, a lot of countries around the region envy Singapore. They say that, wow, being a charity, there's so much support and grants from the government or even from companies, because companies need to do CSR and sometimes they need to give donations in that sense. So actually I feel that there is enough policies to support intervention. Yeah, probably it's just that how do we build the ecosystem whereby there could be more partnership involved, right? Because for community development, especially for example like low income, single moms, it is not just about job, and neither is it just about money. It could be about emotions. It could be about that living environment. So there is a lot of factors, and probably that's also the reason why it is so hard to get out of poverty, right? And for me, I feel that to be inclusive, or rather to have inclusive growth for everybody, we need to support each other. It's not just about money and time, right? So I think that just on the earlier question is how do we care? Yeah, so I think it's mental support, emotional, and sometimes is maybe even providing them with a new environment. Yeah.
So we've heard a lot about, needing to build this whole community of support, the networks, and of course, Cherry also mentioned about this whole social network gap. And I would just like to, once again, the question is really about where do you think the community's role is in trying to create some of this? Because, the government can give out financial aids and all, but, I think a lot of times, like what Sheena has also mentioned, is, in order for these interventions to actually work, it really depends on the individual and, of course, also the kind of support that they get. So really, what is the role of an individual or, in a larger context, the community, to try and help to facilitate, to make these interventions a little bit more effective in that sense?
I think I was just thinking about what Sheena was talking about, right? Like the receiver, whether being in a space of entitlement or whether it's receiving it in what do you say? Is it gratitude, right? Yeah. And in the work that I used to volunteer very extensively with the elderly, right? And on the ground, there are these two kinds of people, right? So there'll be a group of people who are a group of elderly who are actually very gracious about the money and the subsidies that they receive from the government, but there's another group that will also keep complaining, right? But I feel at the heart of all these people, whether they be whichever side they are on, right? It's really echoing what Edward said earlier about and Cherry said about the social relationships. So it's really about it's just a deep sense of loneliness that all of them share, and so the community, as in the family support that they're getting from from the community around them, and the family, yeah.
I'm holding because nobody wants to hold it. What was your question? Or what's the role of the community? So, community, I think it's important to bring up that when we speak about community, we're speaking about the role of every individual. Because if we just blanket community, then nobody takes any responsibility, right? Like we. Okay. So if we talk about the individual, if I'm the receiver of certain, I don't know, grants or whatsoever that the government is giving me or whoever is giving me, I need to learn to take responsibility for my life. Yeah. I need to go, okay, fine, this is the little I have, this is the lot that I have. Actually, it doesn't matter you poor or you rich, it doesn't matter. But learn to take responsibility for your own life. And it is important, not because it takes the weight off somebody else, it's important because I learn to grow in character. Because things like resilience is built upon responsibility. And if it's resilience that I need to tide through my life, then there's no way I can be, hey, come on, you do something for my life. Yeah, I'm trying to be resilient here. I can't. Resilience is built upon responsibility. So as a receiver, I think I need to learn to have that conversation that I'm responsible for myself and for the people around me. Now that's it. If I am the giver, so let's say if I'm the government, I will sound like a bad guy, right? If I go, hey, I give you $200 a month, Adi. Can you take responsibility for your life, please? Of course it's not going to work because that is coming from a space of, again, entitlement. If you can catch it, yeah. But if the question is how can the giver have that conversation of the person, the receiver needing to take responsibility, at the same time have the person feel loved and supported at the same time. I think it is the approach that you were talking about. You know, is this invisible emotions, invisible narrative that really is having a stronghold on people right now. Yeah. So when people go, hey, I feel like you're not giving me enough, but are they really saying things like, I don't feel honored? I feel like the things that I can't do in life, I have no dignity in my life already. Yeah, I have no purpose, I can't. What are they really saying? And the things that we're giving them, are those things really addressing these conversations that they have inside that they can't even articulate or they may not even be aware of? Yeah.
So, I mean, I won't repeat the points that we mentioned, but I just want to quickly just run through a sort of a thought process, because to be honest, in the past, when I was much younger, maybe when I was in secondary school studying social studies, I used to still find it weird. We learn government, community, individual, 3 factors. I was wondering why the government has so many resources at its disposal. You know, why isn't it even more? You know, why can't it do more? But as I grew older, and in fact, as I became more active in what I do in Access and whatnot, I came to realize that at least in the area of tackling inequality, no matter how much public resources the government gives to the disadvantaged, it could never compensate for the private resources the already advantaged already have. So things, if you just run through the whole list, right from differences in prenatal care, differences in conduciveness of study environment at home, differences in strength of familial relationships, and the list just runs on. So it could never compensate for that. And it could never compensate for the more ground-up, grassroots work that needs to be done. And that's where I feel the community comes in. That's the gap that the community organizations come in to plug. So it's really just, I'm just saying this really to help maybe viewers who may still feel, why are we even asking this question? Shouldn't the government do more? Well, there are some areas in which the government may not be able to do more. Yeah.
So to build on Chawi's point, I think as individuals we have a lot to contribute. So I'll perhaps break it down in steps. I think first of all we can find like-minded people who care and want to do something about it. And next, create change by seeking support from like what Chawi mentioned, which is to find support from perhaps corporate people, because many of these people do indeed have a lot of resources and they want to contribute. It is just that nobody is approaching them and they do not know how. So there needs to be some sort of platform, to bring these two parties together. So a community role can be to build and create a support system for everyone that's living in a community. And by community, I can mean like perhaps, one constituency where, there are a few HDB blocks that can be a community. So also, I like what Sheena mentioned, which is, give these people so that they may give back in the future. You encourage, you support them, but at the same time encourage that once they receive the help, they should continue to pay it forward. So then the thing now is, how do you build a community spirit when we are living in a concrete jungle? I think that's a challenge that we have all been struggling to face, because in NTU we have halls of residence, and the halls are not really concrete jungles. They are modeled a bit more like kampongs. So the community spirit is there. People want to help one another, and it's fun, and then you see your friends all the time. So how do we model it to HDB? And how do we build a community that cares for one another? I think we can start with youth, because I think that there's hope. People say that millennials or youth do not care, but I think statistics show otherwise. People do indeed care, and many youths want to contribute, although they do not know how. So we need to start finding these people, again, like-minded people, so that we can bring everyone together on a common platform and contribute.
Right, sorry, before Deborah continues the conversation, I'd just like to give a shout out to the 20 viewers out there who are listening in and tuning in. So where we are at with the discussion right now is that we are talking about how we can, whether we passed the conversation about current interventions, and now we move on to what are some of the things that we need to be aware of. And I think Sheena has helpfully brought out the idea that there needs to be a mindset change, and it's about the attitude of the individual when it comes to wanting to build an inclusive society. And I think some of them, Edward, Aaron, they have also built on this idea. So for those online tuning in, the question that we hope that you can contribute to, some ideas as well, would be how can we bring everyone along as we progress as a nation? So we've talked about mindset, attitudes, perhaps creating, Edward talked about that community within some constituencies, within the neighborhood, and then bridging that partnership between people who has resources and people who don't. And now we just continue the conversation. Yeah, so Deborah.
Okay, so I've been hearing a lot about, the community can really come in to kind of create some of these resources and to support these disadvantaged communities better. But there is always this issue about sustainability and commitment, which I believe just now even Wei Tong has brought it up earlier during her sharing. So, how do you think we can sustain? Because I've also, through my experiences, I've also seen a lot of ground-up initiatives that start, and in less than a year or two, they close, and then all these people that they were serving all return back to square one. So, in your own experiences, what do you think? Then, can we also support the sustainability and the commitment of some of these initiatives? Yeah, because as they are supporting the disadvantaged group, these ground-up initiatives also do need support in order to sustain. So, any thoughts on that?
Okay, so I think, a few keywords that strike me, sustainability, role of community. I think in my own opinion, I think if we talk about the role of community, we probably need to talk about what is the role of the privileged community. I think the role of the privileged community should be less judgmental, more understanding, and there should be more interaction between the privileged and the underprivileged. Right. Why I share all this is because the single moms that I interact with, the visually impaired that I interact with, there are still people who question the single mom, how come she has 6 kids when she's staying in rented flats and she knows that money is not enough, food is not enough. right? And for the visually impaired, she has tunnel vision, but she doesn't, she's not the typical blind person where she wear a black color specs. She don't really use the white cane, and people will tell her that, are you sure you can't see? Don't act as if you're blind, right? So there's a lot of this kind of judgmental stuff still in out there. As for the underprivileged, I think they themselves, they need to take responsibility also. So if there is a role model within the underprivileged community, right, I think the role model should step up and to show the rest that it is possible, for example, to, get out of poverty and to graduate with a good cert and to contribute back to the family. Why I share this is, again, back to the point about sustainability. Very true enough, actually, all of us, students, working adults, we are busy chasing grades and the corporate ladders, that is for sure, right? And then we do community projects or CSR only in probably, I would say probably certain months of the year, right? And then the project closes. But what about the community? Right, they still need support, right? So isn't it better if we could empower the community and let them drive the project themselves? Right, we transfer the responsibility back to them, right? So I have a few friends who are ex-inmates. So recently they have been invited, they've been given a special visit pass to Changi Prison. And they had been given the role as a mentor. So they go into the prison to give speech, to share their transformation, how they break that second prison and things like that, to share with their the current inmates that it is possible, right, to have life transformation and not to go back there again, because although it's not been publicized, but actually the true fact is that we are one of the highest rate of where inmates will revisit back to Changi, right? So I guess finding or creating the role model is very critical and important, because they themselves know best how to survive and how to get out of it, right? And they can be the best, they should be in the best position to motivate their peers, right? And I think that we talk about, that will probably lead to the word empowerment, right? So for community, it's really about empowerment, how to transfer the project back to them, and how to make sure that it is sustainable. So all the resources, we should pump it towards them if they don't know how to find, right? Yep.
So, in my perspective, I think sustainability and commitment is a general issue that is faced across many initiatives and bodies. Again, I look at this from a hard, there's two aspects to look at it, a hard and soft point of view, or you can say a technical and non-technical aspect. I think to keep sustainability and commitment, first in the technical aspect, you need proper frameworks. You need proper systems to ensure that this initiative lives on. I think, many people, as times goes by, sometimes people have different commitments. You might get married, get a new job, have a child, and you cannot devote time, or you might not, as time goes by, you might not care as much because there are other things to do. So how then do you continue? Is of course through recruitment, through new blood. So these things are incorporated in your system so that in the long run, there's already a framework that is in place and people just have to follow the framework. And then things continue in the long run. I think in the soft aspect, it's always about the person, the individual, the character. When you want to start something, you have to be responsible about it. You have to take ownership of what you want to do, and of course, together with your friends, you need to see it through whether or not you fail or you succeed. So that's, in my opinion, very important, and bringing these two aspects together, you can ensure sustainability and commitment to the project.
So I think I'll just add a very quick point, because Access, like I mentioned, is a very new ground-up organization. So to viewers who may be thinking of starting their own ground-up organizations, I would just say that it is important to manage how fast you are scaling up. because you don't want to scale up too quickly. You want to make sure that you're going at a pace that's comfortable with your resources, your volunteers, your manpower. So for example, in Access, that is why we are actually having a second pilot run at the end of the year, rather than say having just one pilot full launch immediately. We're having a second pilot run. So, and also, I guess to people who may be interested in starting their new ground organizations, volunteering, ground-up organization management is not immune from the usual success, failure, like what Edward has mentioned just now. You may fail, but just get up and try again. That's just the way it is. Yeah.